When we find ourselves lost in a dense forest or an abandoned car graveyard, our hearts tighten with the heartbeat of the past. Time seems to stand still, and old memories suddenly resurface. Each car, now covered in green moss and dust, was once a symbol of luxury, speed, and ambition. But now they lie silent, telling their unique stories of a bygone golden era. Join me in exploring these forgotten cars, to hear the whispers from the past and learn about the journeys they once undertook. Walking through the junkyards, we seem to step into a parallel world, where cars that once proudly rolled down the streets are now just faded, rusted shells. Each abandoned car has its own story, a past filled with memories. Perhaps they once carried families on vacation or served as companions on long journeys. But then one day, they were forgotten, buried deep in the dark corners of the junkyard, awaiting their final fate. Looking at these cars, one cannot help but feel a sense of regret. They are like shadows of the past, memories that have faded with time. At French Lake Auto Parts in Annandale, you'll find a treasure trove of vintage cars, including some impressive Buick models. Their vast 88-acre field has become a gathering place for classic car enthusiasts, where vehicles like the Buick Skylark convertible are displayed and carefully preserved. This is not just a parts store, it's a living museum where vintage cars are celebrated and become a source of pride for car lovers. If you are a Buick aficionado, French Lake Auto Parts is the ideal destination to explore and admire these unique models. Venturing deep into the heart of the forest, you unexpectedly come across a scene that tugs at your heart. Amidst the lush green foliage, old rusted cars lie scattered like forgotten souls. Perhaps they once transported happy families, but then, without anyone noticing, they were abandoned and forgotten in the depths of the forest, becoming memorials to a bygone era. Across desolate areas, one can find old cars and trucks abandoned. These vehicles gradually fade and decay, becoming part of the bleak landscape. These cars may have been left behind for years after their owners no longer needed them. They sit forlorn and forgotten in remote areas, becoming part of the dismal and desolate scenery. These vehicles have become a part of history, a legacy of change and the evolution of society. When wandering through abandoned areas, we often encounter classic cars discarded, covered in dust and moss. These cars are like forgotten treasures, holding stories and memories of bygone eras. These junkyards are repositories for classic cars that have been abandoned, their beauty and value faded by time. However, for classic car enthusiasts, these are treasure troves brimming with potential. They can find hard-to-get parts or even rare cars to restore and transform into unique works of art. Exploring these areas is not just about finding classic cars, but also an opportunity to learn about the history and culture of past times. Imagine a place like an enchanted forest where classic cars have been abandoned and are now covered by branches, moss, and rust. This is Old Car City, USA, a site filled with thousands of abandoned muscle cars and classic cars, creating a fairy tale-like scene for history car enthusiasts. Not only is there Old Car City, USA, but also the Wonderland Classic Car Graveyard, a classic car cemetery holding over 300 cars from the 1950s, creating haunting images of these vehicles. Additionally, there is Old Car City, an area full of rare classic cars, now draped in vines and rust. Join me in exploring this classic truck junkyard, where legends of the automotive industry reside. Chevys from 1947 to 1955 await restoration and rebirth, having once experienced their days of glory. We will trace the history of these classic trucks, the beloved companions of many generations of drivers. Although abandoned in the junkyard in Hitchin Hertz, these vehicles still exude the nostalgic beauty and elegance of a bygone era. Let's uncover the stories behind these trucks and witness the timelessness of these industrial masterpieces. One day, the man passed through a desolate area and discovered an old, abandoned GMC motorhome. Despite its weathered exterior, he recognized that inside, many parts and components were still intact and could hold significant value for collectors and vintage car enthusiasts. He immediately contacted his grandson, who is passionate about collecting and restoring classic cars. The grandson was thrilled and quickly restored the motorhome. Afterward, he sold it for a high price, turning it into a gold mine for the family. The abandoned 1957 Chevrolets and Junkyards remain treasures waiting to be discovered and restored. Despite their dilapidated appearance, their value lies in their uniqueness, rarity, and the stories they carry for vintage car collectors. When walking through the deep forest, a man discovered an abandoned vintage car nestled there. Unable to believe his eyes, it truly felt like uncovering a hidden treasure. The car appeared to be from the 1950s, with a design and style that were incredibly unique. I wonder how it ended up so deep in the woods like this. Perhaps it's a valuable heritage, waiting to be discovered and restored. If you want to learn about the vintage cars left forgotten in the Arizona desert, it's truly an undiscovered and captivating treasure. As you drive through fields of golden sand, you might unexpectedly come across the outlines of classic cars. They could be models like Mustangs, Corvettes, or Camaros from the 1960s, 1970s, abandoned and silently waiting to be uncovered. These cars carry stories of the past, of distant memories. They are mobile works of art, with beautiful curves and intricate details. With proper care and restoration, these cars can return to their original beauty and become valuable collector's items. After discovering the capabilities of the Mavic Air 2S, I decided to find an interesting location to test its features. I planned to explore an abandoned car junkyard where classic cars awaited being captured from the unique perspective of a drone. Guiding the Mavic Air 2S up high, I began flying over rows of old, dusty cars scattered across the yard. These cars, once proud on the streets, now lay as remnants, forgotten and decaying. As I navigated through each row, I recorded emotive angles of these cars, gradually deteriorating over time. If you're a vintage car enthusiast, Junkyard Adventure in Hartford, South Dakota is the perfect destination for you. Here, you'll have the opportunity to explore unique vintage cars, each with a nostalgic appearance and many intriguing stories hidden within. Oakleaf Old Cars, a renowned spot in Hartford, SD, is also an ideal stop for those passionate about classic cars. Here, you can admire carefully preserved vintage vehicles that evoke a sense of stepping back in time. Take a stroll through the old junkyards in Hartford, uncovering the hidden stories behind those classic cars. It's sure to be an enjoyable and memorable experience for anyone who loves the history and culture of vintage automobiles. If the abandoned cars evoke special emotions in you, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe to not miss our channel's upcoming videos. Additionally, if you'd like to support us to create more interesting content, consider donating to give us the motivation to continue exploring and sharing these captivating stories with you. Thank you very much.